Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Megawati Ranti Putri, number 34. I want to share about the example process essay with the outline.
Beer. With the first evidence of beer being brewed 9,000 years ago, archaeologists believe that beer might be responsible civilization itself. Beer is essentially liquid bread, the transformation of grain like rice, milk, and barley into a consumable and nutritious product. The process of brewing beers is in some ways similar to the process of making bread, which is why beer can be considered liquid bread. The process of brewing beer is a three-stage process, involving the germination of grain, fermentation, and maturation. The first stage of the brewing process is germinating the grain. Germination refers to the initiation of the seed growth cycle. Typically, this involves soaking or saturating the grain with water to encourage the seeds to grow. To brew beer, the germination process needs to be stopped before the seeds start to sprout. At this critical stage in the germination process, the seeds of the grain will be filled with the fermentable sugar and be considered a malt grain. The grain most commonly used in beers throughout the world now is barley, because barley has a high amount of fermentable sugar. Wherever grain is used, the brewer will need to steep the malt grain in hot water to create a sweet liquid called wort. The product is now ready for the next stage of brewing process, during which wort is transformed into beer. The second stage of the brewing process is fermentation, during which the malt grain is exposed to yeast. From 9,000 years ago until relatively recently, little was known about the role yeast played in the brewing process. The malt grain seemed to magically transform itself into a fizzy beer known by many names, like ale or ale. Finally, in the 19th century, Louis Pasteur peered through the microscope and discovered yeast. Pasteur noticed that these strange microorganisms, the yeast, consume sugar and convert their starches into alcohol. Yeast is responsible for the chemical transformation of sugar into alcohol, the most critical component of the brewing process. In the old days, fermentation occurred with the airborne yeast, but modern brewers and specific strain of yeast to encourage fermentation. Fermentation causes the liquid bread to the wort to be transformed into a fruity alcoholic beverage that can now be called beer. The third stage in the brewing process is maturation. Although technically the beer can be consumed during the second stage, it will not necessarily taste good. The third stage of the brewing process ensures the beer will be palatable. During the maturation stage of the brewing process, the brewer will add hops or other ingredients to improve the flavor of the beer. The hops and other ingredients can be added while the beer is still in fermenting, and also after the yeast has consumed all the fermentable sugar and fermentation has ended. Some beers, especially lagers using bottom fermenting yeast, need to be colored for long periods of time before reaching peak flavor, which can almost be considered a fourth stage in the brewing process. However, Not all beer needs to be mature or lagered for such great length of time. The level of creativity used at this stage of the brewing process is one reason why each beer tastes different from the next. The conclusion is the stage of how to make a delicious beer. The process of brewing is simple, but to do it well requires skill and practice. The process of making beer is similar to the process of making bread. The beer process are roughly similar to the process of making wine. The main difference between beer and wine is that a beer is made of fermented grain like rice or barley, and wine is made of fermented fruit like grapes.
Essay outline.
Based on the process essay above, we can divide the organizational pattern into 5 parts, that is 1. Introductory paragraph. Thesis statement. With the first evidence of beer being brewed 9,000 years ago, archaeologists believe that beer might be responsible for civilization itself. Beer is essentially liquid bread, the transformation of grain like rice, milk, and barley into a consumable and nutritious product. The process of brewing beer is in some ways similar to the process of making bread, which is why beer can be considered liquid bread. The process of brewing beer is a three-stage process involving the germination of grain, fermentation, and maturation. The thesis statement is, the process of brewing beer is a three-stage process involving the germination of grain, fermentation, and maturation. The topic is the process of brewing beer, controlling idea, evidence of beer being brewed 9,000 years ago. Predictor, involving the germination of grain, fermentation, and maturation. 2. Body paragraph 1. Have a components, tool, and equipment, or the first part of the process. The first stage of the brewing process is germinating the grain. Germination refers to the initiation of the seed growth cycle. Typically, this involves soaking or saturating the grain with water to encourage the seeds to grow. To brew beer, the germination process needs to be stopped before the seeds start to sprout. At this critical stage in the germination process, the seeds of the grain will be filled with fermentable sugar and can be considered unmatched grain. The grain most commonly used in the beers throughout the world now is barley, because barley has a high amount of fermentable sugars. Whatever grain you use, the brewer will need to steep the malt grain in hot water to create a sweet liquid called wort. The product is now ready for the next stage of the brewing process, during which wort is transformed into beer. This paragraph explains about the first part of the process. 3. Body paragraph 2. The first or next step of the process. The second stage of the brewing process is fermentation, during which the malt grain is expected to use. From 9,000 years ago until relatively recently, little was known about the role yeast played in the brewing process. The malt grain seemed to magically transform itself into a fizzy beer known by many names like O or L. Finally, in the 19th century, Louis Pasteur peered through the microscope and discovered yeast. Pasteur noticed that this strange microorganism, the yeast, consume sugar and convert their starches into alcohol. Yeast is responsible for the chemical transformation of sugar into alcohol, the most critical component of the brewing process. In the old days, fermentation occurred with erroneous but modern brewers add specific strain of yeast to encourage fermentation. Fermentation causes the liquid bread the wort to be transformed into a fruity alcoholic beverage that can now be called beer. This paragraph explains about the next step of the process. 4. Body paragraph 3. The next step of the process. The third stage in brewing process is maturation, although technically the beer can be consumed during the second stage. It will not necessarily taste good. The third stage of brewing process ensures the beer will be palatable. During the maturation stage of the brewing process, the brewer will add hops or other ingredients to improve the flavor of the beer. The hops and other ingredients can be added while the beer is still fermenting, and also after the yeast has consumed all the fermentable sugar and fermentation has ended. Some beers, especially lagers using bottom fermenting yeast, need to be cellared for long periods of time before reaching peak flavor, which can almost be considered a fourth stage in the brewing process. However, not all beer needs to be mature or lager for such great length of time. The level of creativity used at this stage of the brewing process is one reason why each beer stage different from the next. This paragraph explains about the step of the process. 5. Concluding paragraph. Have essay conclusion. The conclusion is the stage of how to make a delicious beer. The process of brewing beer is simple, but to do it well requires skill and practice. The process of making beer is similar to the process of making bread. The brewing process are roughly similar to the process of making wine. The main difference between beer and wine is that a beer made of fermented grains like rice or barley, and a wine is made of fermented fruit like grapes. This paragraph explains about the conclusion of the process. I think that's all. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.